Horror.
Fuck! Stop screaming! Stop!
Horror is one of the largest genres in video game history, right next to action, RPGs, and my personal favorite, web publishing. Truly, some of the most important genres that we see today. But not all horror games are made the same. No. For every Silent Hill 2, there are about 25 Nights at Freddy's fan games that are trying to use your computer to mine cryptocurrency. But you see, we are not talking about those games. Instead, we are looking at a game that is a reason some of your favorite franchises exist today. A game so important, it changed the very foundation of how we perceive horror games today. That game is called Amnesia: The Dark Descent. By the year 2010, your options for the horror genre were effectively limited to Press X to Punch Boulder, Extreme Space Janitor, and Fathryer. The latter of which being a game so bad, the developers were sentenced to the 67th Circle of Hell to make World of Tanks. You know, that one game that will sponsor any YouTuber soulless enough to take their money because no one will actually play their game. Speaking of, I need to tell you about this video's sponsor, World of Tanks. Just kidding, that was a lie. I was never sponsored in the first place. Foreshadowing is a literary device, but like I was saying, the horror game genre was not looking too good at this time, until suddenly, and without warning, on September 8th, 2010, the Swedish developers of Frictional Games graced the world with Amnesia: The Dark Descent.
Oh shit! I have a bag of Milky Way. Ah! 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 Ah!
Oh my god!
When this game was released, it changed literally everything. It's less of a case of the game walking so future horror games could run, but rather the game sprinted so everyone else could know where the finish line was. After this game released, there was a notable shift in what horror games became popular. We would soon see games like Slender: The 8 Pages, Outlast, and even Five Nights at Freddy's. These are games that put power solely in the hands of whatever is chasing you, rather than putting power in the hands of the player. So, let's talk about Amnesia, shall we? So, what is an amnesia? Well, to quickly summarize, Amnesia is a psychological horror game where you play as Daniel, a Brexit geezer who wakes up in a large castle with no memory of where he is or even why he is. But he does have a note that he wrote to himself, telling him to go to the depths of Castle Brennenburg, find a guy named Alexander, and kill him. Along with that, there is also a mysterious cosmic being called the Shadow that is trying to kill Daniel, meaning that he cannot simply just leave the castle as he has to commit to killing this Alexander guy. And so, Daniel plunges into the depths of Castle Brennenburg, encountering monsters along the way and just barely escaping the Shadow while doing so. And now that my obligatory plot synopsis is out of the way, I want to talk about some of the key ingredients that make this game so memorable. Its gameplay and mechanics. As is common for many horror games, Amnesia is a very dark game, both thematically and literally. Many of the environments are so dark that you literally cannot even see the ground in front of you. The game tries to alleviate this by dimly lighting the darkness if no light source is present, but it is very faint and your vision only extends to about 1 foot. To combat this, however, the game gives you 2 types of light sources, tinderboxes and the lantern. Tinderboxes are an item that you can use on any candle or torch you see that is not currently lit. Once you use a tinderbox, however, you cannot unuse it, and that torch that you just lit will be lit forever, so make sure you use them well and make sure you use them wisely, as tinderboxes are a finite resource, meaning that you can, and you likely will, run out of them. Your second light source is the lantern, a much more flexible tool as you can turn it on and off, but do be warned, the lantern is also a finite resource, requiring oil to be powered, so use it sparingly. Now, you might be wondering, if the game dimly lights up the area around you while you are in darkness, then what is the point of using the lantern or tinderboxes if they make yourself more vulnerable to the monsters that wander about? Well, my friend, that is where the sanity system comes into play. When you stay in darkness for too long, or you look at a monster for an extended period of time, your sanity meter begins to drain. As it goes down, you and the things around you begin to get weird. First, you start to hear strange noises that may or may not be there, screaming in the distance, and maybe a supernatural event or two. But maybe you've been standing in the dark for a little bit longer now. At this point, your vision becomes somewhat unclear, objects begin to twist and turn violently, and your environment becomes stretched in what I can only describe as horizontal vertigo. But, in the final level of your sanity, your hallucinations go from being an inconvenience to completely game-ending. Once you've reached the point where your sanity bar just reads ... you are effectively a dead man walking as the game goes out of its way to make your life a living hell. You will now have an input lag on all your movements, meaning every action you take is slightly more imprecise because there is a several hundred millisecond delay on all your movements. This does not sound like much, but I can assure you, it will drive you just as insane as Daniel. If that wasn't enough, you are now much easier to see to enemies, effectively making your only method of hiding, that being crouching in a dark corner, completely useless. You might be wondering, can it get any worse? The answer to that being, yes. If your sanity level goes to 0, Daniel will collapse to the floor and will cause any enemies in the area to begin searching for him. If this happens during a chase, well, you're dead. Plain and simple. I believe that this is an ingenious design, as it's a great way at ensuring constant fear and tension even if the player is in an otherwise safe area. The fact that you have to constantly manage your sanity at all times is what truly separates this game from others like it, such as Slender or Outlast. It is the fact that you never really know if you are or aren't in a safe area. And, unlike your lantern oil and tinderboxes, sanity is not something that can be easily regained. The only way to regain your sanity is to progress through the story and complete the puzzles that the game throws at you. There is no item that restores your sanity, and you can't just wait in the light because it will not restore anything. You must make progress to fix your mental state. This works both thematically and gameplay-wise because you, the player, have to solve the problems that the game puts in front of you, while also showing Daniel overcome his fears and push forward in his mission to kill Alexander. But what if I told you that everything I just said was actually a lie? A lot of the things I just told you earlier are a complete and total fabrication. No, I did not make up these mechanics just to waste your time, but rather, the game made them up. But also, perhaps you, the player, made up these mechanics in your head. Let me explain. While playing the game, you will receive small tutorials at the top of your screen. And some of these tutorials are either misleading or are outright lies. For example, the tooltip for the sanity system says something along the lines of, staying in darkness will lower Daniel's sanity. If your sanity is too low, you will eventually die. It's very brief and very simple, but it plants a seed in your mind that you have to play the game a certain way, lest you be met with a game over screen. However, this is actually misleading, as even when your sanity is at 0, you will still be fine. You are just knocked out on the ground for a couple of seconds. Along with lying to the player about how certain game mechanics work, the game will also gaslight the player into thinking that every room has at least one monster lurking about. To do this, they will cheekily put reminders on the screen that you are harder to see in the dark, along with playing idle monster sounds in a room nearby. No jump scare, no loud noise, just a small reminder and a distant groan. With all of these combined, it's usually enough to convince you that you need to hide from whatever is about to chase you, despite the fact that there is actually nothing there. I believe this is the pinnacle of game design. Instead of developers making bigger, more interconnected and complex systems, they have now chosen to lie to the player. Okay, that is a little bit reductive, but it is somewhat true to a certain extent. It's just that many games today treat the player like a small toddler in a theme park. Go here, do that, press the I win button. I mean, take Grand Theft Auto 5 and Red Dead Redemption for example. These games, despite being made for a very mature target audience, are probably the easiest games known to man. There is literally a prompt to skip a mission if you fail more than 3 times. But Amnesia does quite the opposite. Many of the game's puzzles rely on your ability to read and/or use context clues to know what you are supposed to do next. The game trusts you to figure out where you are supposed to go, and it does this expertly by simply respecting your intelligence. There is no minimap or any objective markers. You only have your brain and nothing else. Inversely, however, the game also exploits the trust that you give it when it lies to you in the tutorials that pop up on your screen. Because we have been conditioned in games to take tutorials for granted, as if they are the developer whispering in your ear, telling you where you need to go, the game takes advantage of this by misleading you with its tutorials. Here's another example. In a different tutorial that the game puts on your screen, you are told that looking at monsters drains your sanity and will cause the monster to know your location. This is only half true. While it is true that looking directly at monsters will drain your sanity at about 8 times the rate than staying in the darkness does, it will not immediately notify the monster of your location. You are not any easier to spot whether you are or are not looking at it. But because the first part was true, as you can actually hear your sanity getting lower and lower, the player is likely to believe that they are also easier to spot because the developers knew that the player would be under the mindset of, if the first part was true, then the second part is also true as well. This is what we call competitive gaslighting. Speaking of monsters, another way the game manipulates the player is how forgiving it is when it comes to those monsters. Not only are they a lot more scarce than they seem, they are also very quick to despawn when they are done chasing the player. For example, in the storage level, an enemy will spawn almost as soon as you enter the room. If you simply hide for a few seconds, it will soon despawn and cannot bother you anymore. But the most important part is that as the player, you don't have access to this information. In the player's mind, the enemy is still in the level. It's just somewhere else, waiting for you to show your face. But let's say the monster does get you, and you are met with a game over screen. When you respawn, you're probably going to be a lot more cautious and wary of your surroundings, in hopes that the monster does not get to you again. But the reality is that the monster that killed you is despawned after you die, meaning it can't chase you around anymore. This design is actually very intentional, as it avoids a trap that plagues many horror games, even today. When the player gets trapped in a cycle of being killed by the monster that was camping around the corner, the game goes from being scary to annoying and frustrating, which ruins any and all tension that has been built up. Instead of experiencing the game's atmosphere, you are instead looking for ways to crack the game's code to make it easier. In other words, the more you die, the more that you learn the game's mechanics. So to avoid this, the game tries to avoid killing you as much as possible, to keep you scared and uncertain of what comes next. By keeping a steady pace while also avoiding difficulty spikes, the game ensures that the player is always kept on their toes in every single corridor that they wander throughout the castle. So, to conclude, I believe that Amnesia: The Dark Descent is a horror and game design masterpiece because of how it changed the precedent for horror games after it. Along with that, it created new and unique mechanics that forced problems for players to solve, like the sanity system, while also doing something that few games have ever even thought of: lying to the player. I hope that after watching this video, you will take some time out of your weekend to enjoy this one-of-a-kind game. It's about $20 on Steam, but I have seen it go on sale for as low as $2 before. There are also custom maps that you can find on the Steam Workshop and modding websites, meaning the fun never ends. With that, I appreciate you watching this video till the end, and I hope you have a lovely day.